Hey everybody, this is Kevin Fraley, President with the Midnight Sun Flycasters. Today just recording another version of the meeting that we had back in November, going over this Northwest Alaska sheefish fishing presentation and club updates. If you guys aren't aware, these are our 2023-2024 officers. I'm the president of the club, been here for a few years. We have Max Auschwitz as the vice president. Max is an employee at Big Ray's Fly Shop and an avid fisherman here in Interior Alaska. Our secretary and conservation coordinator is Alex Garnier, who's been a club friend for several years now. Great spay casting instructor and local guide and guides around the world. And then our longtime treasurer, Dave Vick. So we had our December meeting that's listed here. The Flycasters signed on to this campaign called Hunters and Anglers for the Brooks Range. I'll talk more about that in a second. But in January and February, we have some meetings slated. I think we're going to have Jim Brashear, who's the kids camp director and longtime club member. He and his son Evan did a road trip where they fished for a bunch of different trout species as they drove from Alaska down to the lower 48. So I think he's going to give us a talk in January on that, which will be awesome. And I believe we'll have Mike Lundy of Muskie Mike Flies to do a presentation in February, talking about different sort of getting going in fly tying, what the basics are if you want to get started in that, and then maybe some fly tying instruction. And in March, we'll likely have our fly fishing film festival that we do each year. I'm not exactly sure when that'll be, but that'll be probably at the UAF pub. And it sounds like we're going to likely have a kids camp again. June 7th through 9th are the tentative dates for that. But we won't send out the full information until probably January or February. So the Flycaster support for the hunters and anglers for the Brooks Range. We took a poll with the membership. In the past, MSFC has not really waded into sort of conservation issues or being political in that way, but with Trout Unlimited sort of being a waning force here in Fairbanks, and this really important issue of the Ambler Road, which is what the Hunters and Anglers for the Brooks Range is basically opposing anglers and hunters that don't want to see this Ambler Road go through into Gates of the Arctic National Park and crossing the Kobuk River, the John River, the Alatna River, the Koyukuk, potentially putting sport fish populations at risk. So we took a poll and there was a majority of respondents that supported signing on as a partner for this Hunters and Anglers for the Brooks Range campaign. And this campaign is led by Jen Leahy, who is a Anchorage-based representative for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. So the club will be putting in comments on the Ambler Road in opposition to that going in. But that being said, there's of course a lot of diversity of opinion in the club, as you can see from the results. So, we don't want to be pushing anybody out or anything like that. That's just what the club will be commenting. And, we encourage you to give your own comments and your own side of the story for this Ambler Road comment period, which is closing on December 22nd. This will be the last time that the public basically gets to have a chance to say something about the road before the fate of it is determined by the Department of Interior in 2024. These are the other partners from with Hunters and Anglers for the Brooks Range, so we're in good company there. Fly Fisherman Magazine, Trout Unlimited, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Sims, Alpaca, Fish Pond, American Fly Fishing Trade Association, Orvis, a lot of great brands and local businesses as well. So I feel like we're in very good company there. I'm glad we made the decision as a group to sign on to this great cause. And I hope that personally, really hope that the Ambler Road does not go in. And not trying to alienate anybody who thinks otherwise. That's just personal opinion, and we'll see what happens in 2024. Some announcements. So I'm on the Chena Riverfront Commission, which is a board and commission with the Fairbanks North Star Borough, and it makes recommendations to the borough mayor and city of Fairbanks regarding uses and development of land along the riverfront in town. Right now, they're looking for board members, and so if you have any interest in this and you want to kind of chip in, help with the community, there's a lot of important things that come through before the commission. There's scheduled, and give me an email, or if you're really serious, you can just contact that borough official there. But if you want more information or just some info, definitely contact me. The meetings for this commission are only every quarter, so noon on the fourth Wednesday of January, April, July, and October. Not a huge time commitment, but there's very important things that come in front, and it's, we all care about the Chena River very dearly since that's such an important fishery for us. It's fly fisher people here in town, so consider, chipping in and helping out on that board. Definitely could need some more citizen engagement. Okay, getting to the slideshow today. So I'll be talking about Northwest Alaska sheefish fishing and research that happened in 2023 that my organization, the Wildlife Conservation Society, accomplished with help from lots of different partners. So a little bit about the Wildlife Conservation Society. It was formed in 1895. It's helped on by Theodore Roosevelt to become established. Started out as the New York Zoo and New York Aquarium, but has now branched out into this global conservation program. And so, there's WCS offices in Africa and South America, Southeast Asia, Mongolia, and then in Fairbanks here, we have the small office, and we're what's known as the Arctic Beringia program. You can see some of the activities that we're up to kind of on the center and right of the screen here. So I'm the fisheries ecologist for the Arctic Beringia program. Oftentimes we'll have a mammal specialist, avian ecologist, a social scientist, and other staff members as projects develop, also a director and some administrative staff. But recent projects have included, like on the top right there, GPS collaring and tracking wolverines up on the Arctic slope. Then below that, tagging and measuring birds around Prudhoe Bay and other areas in the Arctic, and even some work on bison reintroductions. But for me, what I'm doing is a lot of fish monitoring of diversity and abundance out in Cape Krusenstern National Monument, which is way out in Northwest Alaska near Kotzebue, looking at how all these different species that are important for subsistence are doing out in coastal lagoons there. But talking today about the sheefish, which we also catch in those coastal lagoons out there, they are, of course, our largest whitefish species in Alaska. They can live for more than 30 years and get up to 60 pounds. There's a lot of the IGFA world records and line class records from the Kobuk River and its tributaries. So the Kobuk is considered probably the world's foremost sheefish fishery. These fish are predatory. They eat other fish and whatever they can get in their big mouth there. They're kind of known as tarpon of the north or tarpon of the tundra. So they have that big bass-like mouth and real shiny scales, even though they're not related to tarpon at all. They sort of have that same kind of look. There are both anadromous and freshwater populations. The ones up in Northwest Alaska on the Kobuk and Selawik rivers are largely anadromous, so they're going out to the coast a lot and spending time out in saltwater or brackish water feeding before they travel up the rivers to spawn. But populations in the Yukon, like near Fairbanks on the Tanana River, not all of them will go out to the ocean because that's a long journey. So some of those are more freshwater migratory populations. These fish are found in Alaska, Russia, and Northwest Canada. So kind of a special fish. And in Alaska, they're only found in the Kuskokwim, Yukon, Selawik, and Kobuk drainages. Those are the only ones that are thought to be where they spawn. They move along the coast, sort of around the mouths of those rivers, but those are the main areas where they're at. So today, sort of looking at this Northwest Alaska area, that's what I'll be talking about, Kotzebue Sound in particular. You can see, the town of Kotzebue, sort of on the center left there, sort of a regional hub. Alaska Airlines has couple daily flights into there from Anchorage. So, and then there's flights that go to all those smaller villages in white out in the west there from Kotzebue with Bering Air. You can see the Blue River is the Kobuk River. I didn't highlight the Selawik River, but that's just to the south of it. And you can see some of these big national park lands that the Kobuk River flows along. And within the Kobuk Valley National Park, the Noatak National Preserve, and Gates of the Arctic National Park up near its headwaters. You can see us where we're at in Fairbanks, down on the bottom right, and then Coldfoot and Prospect Creek are along the Dalton Highway. As you run up north towards the Brooks Range there, Bettles is the kind of the hub for flying out to many of these areas that are not too far west. So first I'll talk about these sheefish distribution and hybridization investigations that we've been doing. And in February of 2023, myself and colleagues went out to the village of Point Hope and also to Kotzebue, and then our delegates went to other villages to interview subsistence fishermen and fisheries biologists about instances of hybridization between whitefish species and also the distribution of sheefish along the coast. We have a couple projects going that are related to that. So one, we want to look at how distribution of sheefish might be changing with climate change, with warming waters and longer summers. We've had reports that they travel further up and down the coast than in previous times, and so we wanted to give or create an updated range map for the species. Also, in the literature, there's been instances of hybridization, particularly between sheefish and humpback whitefish. So we wanted to talk to subsistence fishers, who are the people that are seeing the most fish, handling them almost every day in the summer, and also regional biologists to get an idea of both of these things. How often are these hybrids occurring, and is there any changes over time with their occurrence? And also, is the sheefish distribution changing? This photo is of Point Hope, so it's a small Inupiat village northwest of Kotzebue, along the coast there. Pretty small little place. So we flew in there to do some different presentations and to do interviews about these topics. That's what Point Hope looks like. Pretty snowy, quiet place when we were there, but people were super friendly, and we got to talk to a lot of great folks. This is a meeting at Point Hope there, pretty well attended, and talking about different fisheries projects that we were doing, and also soliciting information on the sheefish distribution and whitefish hybridization. After the Point Hope stop, well, we talked to some people there, and they had the people had actually seen sheefish in their nets as far north as Cape Thompson, which is a long way north, just south of Point Hope there. So that was a pretty big observation that we're including, of course, is that the people were catching sheefish that far north. That's never been documented before. Fish that we assume are coming from the Selawik and Kobuk rivers going all the way that far north. So that was really valuable. The folks in Point Hope did not observe any of the hybrid whitefish, but that was fine. So this is the village of Kivalina here. Stopped there on the way to talk to one of our contacts and interview him, and also go do a little bit of ice fishing on the Woolik River. Here's out on the Woolik. We could look down the hole and see grayling and Dolly Varden, but they were pretty sluggish in February here. It was this guy Kyle. He caught one grayling, but yeah, it was pretty slow the day we were out there, and that's sort of, I guess, how it goes. Then you could see some of the bigger dollies swimming around, but we had maybe an hour or so to fish, so it wasn't a long time. I was just there for the day, but it was nice to talk to him, and he was telling me about these sheefish that he had caught in Kivalina Lagoon there, which was a really valuable observation as well. And so for the hybrid interviews that we were talking about, so here's some photos of the sheefish, humpback whitefish, and least cisco, and then the possible most common hybrids that are seen. Randy Brown with Fish and Wildlife Service took these photos, and you can see that top right there is the humpback whitefish and sheefish hybrid. Bottom right is humpback whitefish and least cisco hybrid. Pretty interesting looking fish. And it is hard to tell if it's a hybrid or not, unless you see a lot of these fish and are really paying attention. And that's what we found, is that a lot of people, weren't looking closely enough to register these fish, but then there was other people that were really dialed in and definitely noticed these hybrids. So that was cool. So this map shows, just for the hybrids, places and people that we talked to. The numbers are people, subsistence fishers. The letters are from fish biologists or scientists that are out in the field, were telling us whether they had seen hybrids or not. The circles with green show a confirmed or very likely sighting of a hybrid whitefish. So like if you look up at Prudhoe Bay there, that one that says C, that's UAF's long-term monitoring project up there. They observed several humpback whitefish and least cisco hybrids over the last several years. And then if you look out towards northwest Alaska, right around Kotzebue there are several fishermen, and also like historical reports that denoted the hybrids being present. Also around the Fairbanks area, especially in the Chattanooga River, and in some places like the Canute River, the Black River, scientists have found hybrids. Typically sheefish humpback hybrids, but a couple of those least cisco humpback hybrids too. The red circles denote something pretty interesting. Retired fish biologist Ken Alt actually tried to hybridize sheefish and humpback whitefish together from the Chattanooga River, and then introduce them into different lakes to see if they would be a potential sport fishing species that could be stocked. So he released some of these hybrids, which successfully hatched back into the Chattanooga River, and then some out in a lake out near Eagle there, near the Canadian border. It seems that these hybrids never became self-sustaining because there was no angler reports or further follow-ups from Fish and Game like that. But pretty amazing that back in the day they were trying interesting techniques like that to see what might be good to stock in different lakes. For the sheefish distribution along the coast. So you can see the shaded area. This is sort of our updated distribution now. And previously it was sort of only in, right where you see Cape Cruisenstern, kind of in the center right there, and then down to the Horn, up just to the west of Deering, and then to the east of that. That was sort of the Sheefish Range, or so it was thought in Kotzebue Sound. But we found, evidence that they're being caught all the way far north to Cape Thompson, where you see the shading end there at the top, and then all the way down to Ikpek Lagoon, which is southwest of Shishmaref. So pretty cool that these fish are traveling that far along the coast, around the Horn, down around towards Wales and Nome. Fish from the Yukon River are going along the coast too, so they're almost overlapping there. In the future, maybe there'll be some more exchange. There hasn't been much evidence of that in the past. There was one fish, sheefish, that was tagged in the Kuskokwim River that ended up in the Yukon River drainage, but no evidence of that happening between the Yukon and the Selawik and Kobuk populations. So anyway, some good information there to update our distribution maps. We're happy with that data. Okay, so then another part of the sheefish research was this pop-ups archival satellite tagging that we were conducting. So the red stars here show places where we tagged sheefish with these pop-up satellite archival tags. These tags ride along with the fish for a couple months to over a year and tell us about where they're traveling, what kind of water temperatures, depth, that sort of thing. I'll show you some pictures. So the red stars where we caught tagged fish up in Cape Cruisenstern National Monument, several out in front of Kotzebue through the sea ice, and then several up on the upper Kobuk River to sort of get a spread of different areas and hopefully get some fish that are doing different things. These are the two tag types we used. The one on the top there is solar powered, and it has a release that's triggered by gunpowder, actually, which is pretty cool. And so that one can work in fresh or salt water. The one below it has a battery in with it, and but it only will trigger in salt water. And the idea with these tags is they are attached to the fish, like you see on the right there. They ride on the fish, and then when the release mechanism hits the date that it's set for, the tag pops off the fish, floats to the surface of the water, and transmits its data to a satellite. The advantage of this, of course, is that we don't have to go out and try to track the fish around in this gigantic area of Northwest Alaska. It'd be very impractical to try to, tag and track fish with normal means like radio telemetry or acoustic telemetry. So these satellite tags are a great way to do this potentially. We're just trialing it out though. These are the first uses on this species. These tags are about the size of a small light bulb, by the way. So, and they're neutrally buoyant, so they don't, pull the fish upwards or weigh them down or anything like that. They just sort of wobble behind the fish until they detach, and then the fish is left alone. So this was the first one we tagged out in Cape Cruisenstern National Monument. You can see the lagoon there on the bottom right. This is sort of the habitat where we were catching them, where we go out every year. And you can see that tag is pretty big for this fish. It was at our minimum size, 600 millimeters fork length for tagging, but we definitely prefer to get bigger fish. So the subsequent fish that we tagged were much larger. Then we went out to Kotzebue in it was April of 2023. This is kind of the finish line for a dog sled race, the Kobuk 400 that was going on. But you can see this is sort of where we're ice fishing right out in front of town there with the mountains and that sort of thing across the Kotzebue Sound in the distance. It was negative 20 degrees, so it was pretty cold but beautiful out there. And so every day we were going out, putting up our ice fishing tent and catching and tagging these fish. It was kind of it was interesting dialing everything in. This is mixing up the gunpowder substance that triggers the releases on those Desert Star brand tags. So I was a little bit nervous that it might blow up in my face, but it all worked out. Got those all set up and ready to go on fish. And this is out on the ice, just jigging and catching the fish. We had the shelter set up with a propane heater in there, so that because it was so cold, we wanted to make sure the fish stayed warm and their eyes and gills were not freezing up. And so we had this PVC tube basically full of water. Once we caught the fish, it was put in that sort of half cut open tube, and there it would remain in the water so it could breathe while we attached the tags. It's quite quick to attach the tags, especially with the guy in the red coat there. His name is Mike Courtney. He's an expert on this technology, so it was awesome to have him along for this trip. He's super proficient at attaching these tags and also a great fisherman too. So it was awesome to have him along. We were out there with folks from Kotzebue who are really interested in what we were up to. They really enjoyed seeing the tags and seeing our silly little ice fishing rods. They all have like these big chunks of wood with 150-pound braid on there that they use for catching the sheefish, whereas we were using lighter gear. We kind of wish that we had their gear near the end because you can get the fish to the top of the hole a little quicker. But it all worked out just fine, and it was really great to talk to people out there on the ice and get some ideas and just see what people are up to and help them be aware of our research. And so I went on the KOTZ radio, the local radio station as well, and talked about what we were up to, and we put out flyers around town. We expected that maybe some of the locals would catch some of our tagged fish. We were hoping they wouldn't catch them all, the day after we put them out and kill the fish or something. But we have a reward system. If they had caught a fish, they would hopefully have turned in the tags, and we didn't. We have yet to get any reports. So I think the sheefish population is a lot larger than you would expect. Like it's estimated that over 20,000 sheefish are harvested annually around the Kotzebue area. So pretty incredible that there's that many. We were fishing in about 40 feet of water here. This is sort of brackish water, and there was lots of sheefish in there. We kept a few, and they were full of herring and smelt, so they were obviously eating well and really, really active, even during this period in the late winter there. Here's one of the fish that was tagged. You can see that tag on its dorsal fin area there, so about to be released back into the water. There's Mike with one as well. Some of the fish were almost too big to tag, like the tag saddles where the tags attach would barely reach across the fish. So we sort of had to have this middle-sized fish and not have it to be too big to be able to tag them real comfortably. You can see that PVC tube down on the bottom there where they're sort of put into, and then we pour water over them and before we release them. This is a video. Let's see if it works, but showing a release of one of the fish. And so the ice was pretty thick. We brought an 8-inch auger, but that was kind of small for some of the sheepish. So luckily, one of our contacts there was letting us use the 10-inch auger. There was definitely a couple fish that were very difficult to get through the 8-inch holes, mainly because it's hard to get their head in the hole. And then once you get that in there, you can slide them up through the ice. And we kept a few too. So this is one that was kept, but yeah, really nice sized fish. This one caught on a musky Mike hair jig there, bucktail hair jig. So we were trying all sorts of different lures. Even halibut jigs worked for these guys. They're very voracious. The people that were there were just using large metal spoons, reflective spoons, no bait or anything like that. So obviously the sheefish are feeding by sight, and those were working just great. But we tried some other methods as well. So. And then here's some of the preliminary data from those pop-up satellite archival tags. And so we get kind of estimated location data. This is from April to June of 2023. There was 5 tags that popped up during that early period, and then we'll have 11 more tags that will pop up in July 2024. So sort of waiting on some of those fish still. But these fish didn't do anything too incredibly interesting. They kind of stayed around within Hotham Inlet and Selawik Lake there, Kobuk Lake, and moved around. So that's sort of the established range of where people think, or scientists think, that they stay most of the time. Whereas, we were hoping to capture some of the movements further up and down the coast outside of Kotzebue, but this will be good data to show kind of the temperatures of water they're moving around in, as well as the depths that they were occupying. And I think we even have accelerometry data for these ones, which it'll show us like how fast they're moving, if they were doing fleeing or chasing behavior, that sort of thing. So haven't dived into that data too much yet, but excited to look more into that, and we'll probably wait to sort of till we get the rest of our tags that pop up next July to really jump into it. So then we had four remaining pop-up satellite archival tags, and we put them out on this Kobuk River float that we did in September. This was partially for another project to get contaminants data as baseline studies for the Ambler Road, but we also put out our remaining pop-up satellite archival tags. We had 4 additional ones just to spread out the effort a little bit and hopefully capture some interesting different type of movements based on different fish that we were catching. So we floated from Lake Minnecacosa, which is sort of on the center right there, down Beaver Creek to hit the Kobuk River and floated to the Paw River confluence, which is sort of bottom center. And that's where we got picked up by a float plane. We flew out of Bettles and got picked up by Brooks Range, dropped off and picked up by Brooks Range Aviation. The weather was terrible in September was when we went. So, and also Brooks Range Aviation was having problems with the airplanes. They only had one Beaver on floats remaining. The other ones were damaged or down for repair. So they were a bit worried that if something happened to their final plane, they wouldn't be able to get us. But we kind of assured them that, well, we can always just float down to Kobuk Village, which is on the center far left there, and get a regularly scheduled flight with Bering Air back to Kotzebue and back to Anchorage if they weren't able to pick us up. So they were fine with that, and we got out there. It was a difficult trip though, very, very, very rainy, and the water was just super high. But this is my colleague Wyatt. He's a fish biologist for the Koyukuk, Inoko, and Nowitna National Wildlife Refuges. And so he was along on the trip. The rivers we were floating, the Alatna in particular, and then the Kobuk, he had some interest in because they're tributaries of the Koyukuk and not too far away from his refuge area. So it was great to have him along as another fish biologist to help with the effort. This is the beaver that we took from Bettles there. You can see the weather's not too terrible there, so we were excited because we were finally getting out after kind of being stuck in Bettles for a number of days. And while we were in Bettles, of course, there was a lot of just kind of sitting around and looking around. We were at the lodge quite a bit and looking at some of the funny postings and that sort of thing and the aviation thing, but checking in with the flight service every day, and they were probably sick of us and finally glad to get rid of us once we finally were able to get out on the water. Well, this is flying out to the Kobuk, so this is over one of the Kobuk tributaries. I'm not sure which one, but yeah, pretty miserable. The pilot was like kind of 50-50 whether we would make it out there because we were having to go lower and lower through some of these valleys. The weather in Bettles was pretty good, but out as you got out further west, it was like this. But he was a champ and he got us out there. This is Lake Minicosa, so typically there's a nice beach to land on. We did not have that luxury. We basically had to jump out into the drowned shrubbery there and unload all our stuff, but we got it worked out and kind of had a yard sale there, everything on the bank, started putting things together. It was pretty rainy, pretty miserable, but I was in a dry suit and Wyatt had some really good rain gear, so we were prepared. This is the plane taking off. I believe it's a video. Yeah, so you can see how flooded it is there. Like the spruce tree is underwater, and we were a little worried seeing the plane go away. It was going to be difficult to find places to camp just because all the nice gravel bars that are usually available. We could see from the air they were pretty well covered with water. So we were a little apprehensive, but we got underway. It's everything loaded up. Wyatt is pretty stoked despite the weather. But everything fit in the boat and we were looking good to get going. We did a little bit of fishing in the lake here. We were hoping to catch some pike and lake trout, but I think with the high water, just wasn't gonna happen. All that rain coming down cools the water and the fish are usually less active. So we weren't able to get any fish there. We did catch some grayling in the outlet of the lake though. This is a campsite for the first night, and you can see how high the water is. Usually there'd be nice gravel bars there, but it's just full to the bank. Here's our sad little campsite for the first night. If the water had come up just a few inches, it would have gone up into these trees and we would have been scrambling to go somewhere else. But luckily, it stayed below the bank and this was a decent spot to spend the night. My tent was a little shabby, so I had a rain fly over or tarp over it, whereas Wyatt just had that new Kuiu tent there that seemed to do a great job. So I subsequently went ahead and bought one of those Kuiu tents because I liked Wyatt so much. And we did find some fish. We were intending to catch lots of sculpins and that sort of thing in minnow traps, smaller fish that are better for looking at local contaminant levels. But we just struggled to catch anything besides grayling and sheefish. We caught like a humpback whitefish. We were hoping to catch pike, didn't have any luck with that. But basically, we had to, luckily, I knew the river so well. I knew where these clear tributaries were coming in. So we we're at least able to get a good sample of grayling. And then later on, we found the sheefish. Some more photos of the river and the boat. This slough here, we saw a couple of juvenile pike, but we weren't able to get them. But the weather was, yeah, still pretty bad, a lot of rain, and river continued to rise. We were also hoping to get some genetic samples from chum salmon for Fish and Game, but because there was no river gravel bars, the chums were not washing up on those, so we weren't able to do anything with that. We finally found this backwater near one of the sheefish spawning areas upstream of Selby River, and there was a ton of sheefish in this backwater. So Wyatt cast a spoon in there and started catching lots of them. And so kind of the game was on. We basically what we did is Wyatt would cast out with his spoon and hook one of these fish, and if it, bring it in, and if it was the right size, we would satellite tag it, pop up satellite tag it. That's what we did for our first fish that we caught. We also needed to keep some for contaminants and that sort of thing, contaminant sampling, but we wanted to get our satellite tags out first. That was the top priority. So Wyatt was the guy that would winch them in with the spinning rod, and then I would work on tagging them while he held the fish in the water, and that worked out pretty good. And then later on, we busted out the fly rods and or the fly rod. Wyatt continued to use the spinning rod, but I used the fly rod, and we caught a lot more fish after that. Yeah, there's one nice one caught on the fly. Basically, almost every cast, you can see the top left there, there's that log floating around or kind of lodged in the water there, and right around that, almost every cast you would hook one, which was great. So it's caught, maybe half a dozen outside the ones that we caught for contaminant sampling, and then I felt that was good. My arm was pretty tired after that. They were great fighters. Here's one of the ones we satellite tagged, caught via Wyatt's spoon there. And yeah, so those we sent on their way. Hopefully they will report some really cool location when they pop up in July. The weather was getting a little better by this point, but you can see how flooded the river was still, but we were making things work. Continuing on down the river, we didn't find many places to fish, kind of where clear water streams are coming in, like the Selby River where it came in. We caught some grayling there. And I had a few sloughs marked on my GPS where we found some more sheefish, which was good. Wyatt with a nice grayling. And this is the place where we got picked up, just downstream of the Paw River confluence. There's this island here. And we were worried because we weren't sure if the island was even going to be above the water. It barely was. You can see we've got a few inches there where we were camping. If it had rained anymore, during the time we were there, it would have gone underwater. But luckily we had just a space there because this was where the float plane needed to come to pick us up. If that island wasn't there, they weren't going to guarantee that they could pick us up, and we would have had to float another couple days down to Kobuk Village, and the logistics would have been a little more challenging and expensive to get everything back to Fairbanks, the raft and all that, and samples. So we were fingers crossed that we were hoping to get out there. When we first came up on this island, there was a grizzly bear that tried to swim across to us and hang out with us on the island. And of course, yeah, we weren't letting that happen. So we sort of waded in the water and yelled at him and pushed him back to the bank. So he started to swim over, and then he thought better of it and went back. Probably smelled some of the fish samples we had and heard all the fish splashing, because there was actually just downstream of this, there was a great hole with tons of sheefish hanging out. So we were, right at our campsite there, we were able to catch quite a few, and basically did that till we were happy with it. Fish and Game kind of recommends that you don't fish, if you're catching and releasing these fish, it does stress them a little bit. They're on their spawning migration. So it's nice to catch, quite a few. And then when you feel like you've caught enough, to not just try to go for a huge body count, but kind of let some of those fish alone. So that's sort of what we did. And there's Wyatt with a nice one just right at camp there. The weather was clearing up. Nice view of the mountains in the background with a little snow on top there. Nice fall colors. So yeah, that was pretty much that trip. Some works in progress that we're doing further with the sheefish. So there's these really cool ear stones. They're called otoliths. They're these calcium carbonate structures in the skulls of all fish that have bones anyway. That are basically have this material that's laid down every year, like rings on a tree. And you can see on that top right side there is an otolith from a sheefish. I think it's like a 12-year-old sheefish or something that was caught from one of the coastal lagoons. So this other thing that we're doing is looking at these otoliths, and you can run a laser across the rings, their life basically, and look at these different isotopes of strontium, which is an element, and you can tell whether the fish was in freshwater or saltwater or brackish water during different periods in its life, which is really cool. So trying to piece together some of what the sheefish do throughout their life. We don't know a lot about that. We know they spawn in the Selawik and Kobuk rivers way upstream. We know that they're caught along the coast, but we don't really know what an individual fish does throughout its life very well. So trying to piece together some of that. This is a work in progress, but on the left side, that graph there, the shadings in yellow show brackish water residency, red is more marine water, and then blue is freshwater periods. That was the 12-year-old fish from Ockaluk Lagoon, which is just north of Kotzebue. We also looked at the beginning stages of the otolith, like right around the time the fish was born, to try to match that to the river of residency. So we had some fish that were known to be spawning, excuse me, in the Kobuk River, and then known to be spawning in the Selawik River. And we were able to match the chemistry during the early stages of fish that were caught out in the lagoons to pretty reliably tell which river they were coming from, because we're interested to know, if people, subsistence fishers, are out there catching these sheefish, where are they coming from? Are they Kobuk River fish? Are they Selawik River fish? Turns out it's a mixture of the two, but not too surprisingly, more Kobuk fish, because the Kobuk River mouth is a little closer to these lagoons than the Selawik. And then some of them we weren't able to assign, but more work to be done there. We got to analyze a lot of that data, but it's pretty cool stuff that you can do with these ear stones or otoliths. So that's about it. Thanks for listening. If you want more information on WCS and our fisheries projects and these sheefish, definitely scan that QR code or go to our website, which is leucichthes.org. Leucichthes is the species name for sheefish. So look up the species name for sheefish and .org, and you can find our website. And also, if you get a chance, think about commenting on the Ambler Road. You can go to the BLM's e-planning website and submit a comment. There's a nice little comment box there if you click on their Participate Now option and get in a comment on the Ambler Road if you feel so inclined. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys hopefully at the next meeting.